Imagine standing in a vast desert camp under a sky so full of stars it feels close enough to touch. Fires glow in front of every tent. 12 banners rise above the tribes: a lion, a ship, a serpent, an eagle. In the very center, the tabernacle glows with the presence of God, a fiery canopy by night. This is Israel, 12 tribes perfectly ordered around the living God. Every family, every tribe knows its place, its banner, its position. You can almost hear the murmur of voices, the bleating of flocks, the laugh of a child. These aren't just names on a page. These are real people, with real stories, failures, and promises spoken over them. Promises that would shape nations. This isn't about ancient charts or who had the biggest army. This is a story about identity, about what happens when God gives people a name, a blessing, and a place, and how they live up to it or fall short. It's a story that still speaks to anyone who wonders where they belong. Centuries later, a man on a lonely island will see a vision: God sealing his servants from every tribe of Israel, except one. We'll get to that missing tribe later. For now, stay here in the camp. Look at the banners. Listen to the stories these tribes carry, because each one reveals something about the God who still writes names, and the place he has prepared for those who feel lost. You can almost feel the tension the night Jacob called his sons to his bedside. The old man could barely lift his head, yet his words carried the weight of heaven. He looked first at his oldest son, Reuben. The name itself was a promise. In Hebrew it is Reuben, behold, a son. Leah had cried out in relief and hope when he was born. This was the child who would carry the family line, the one who would receive the double portion, the strength, the dignity, the power. Jacob himself said it on that final night: Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. And then everything changed with one night. You know the story. While his father was still grieving the loss of Rachel, Reuben went into Bilhah, his father's concubine. One act, one moment of unchecked desire, and the birthright that should have been his was taken from him forever. Jacob's voice cracked as he spoke the judgment: unstable as water, you shall not excel. You can feel the grief in those words. The firstborn, the one who should have led, now told he would not excel. The tribe that came from him would be known for instability, for starting strong and fading. Later, the land east of the Jordan would be given to Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh. Good land, but always on the edge, always exposed to the first attacks from the east. Reuben's story is a warning written in flesh and blood. The position you are born into does not guarantee the future you will live. But Jacob was not finished. Next came Simeon and Levi. These two had already shown what their anger could do. When their sister Dinah was violated in the city of Shechem, they did not simply seek justice. They deceived the men of the city, waited until they were helpless from circumcision, and then slaughtered every male. They took the women and children and the livestock as plunder. It was not justice, it was rage dressed up as honor. Jacob remembered. On his deathbed, he could still see the blood. Simeon and Levi are brothers, he said. Instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their counsel. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. You feel the sorrow in that curse. A father who had to speak judgment over two of his own sons. And yet, and this is where the story begins to turn, that scattering became something else for Levi. The tribe that should have been scattered in shame was instead scattered in service. They received no land of their own. Instead, they were given cities among all the other tribes. They became the priests, the ones who stood between God and the people, the ones who carried the presence. What looked like a curse became a calling. The same tribe that once used swords in anger would one day use them to guard the holiness of God. You begin to see the pattern. God does not erase the story, he redeems it. And then Jacob came to Judah, the fourth son, not the first, not the strongest by birth order. Yet the words that came out of Jacob's mouth over Judah were unlike anything he said to the others. Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. You can almost see the old man's eyes brighten as he spoke those words. A scepter, a lion, a promise that one would come from this tribe who would receive the obedience of the nations. From the fourth son came the royal line. From Judah came David. And from David's line came the one the prophets would call the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Three sons, three very different stories. One lost the birthright through failure. Two others were marked by violence and scattering. Yet one of them was lifted into priesthood. And the fourth, the one least expected, received the promise that would one day hold the hope of the whole world. This is what the tribes teach us from the very beginning. Your starting place does not determine your ending place. Your worst moment does not have the final word. And sometimes the blessing you thought you lost shows up in a brother you never imagined would carry it. We have only just begun to walk among these tribes, but already you can feel it. These are not just names in a list. They are mirrors, and the God who spoke over them is still speaking over people today. You have walked with Reuben and felt the cost of one moment that changed everything. You have stood with Simeon and Levi and seen how violence almost destroyed them, yet how God turned even that scattering into priesthood. You have heard the surprising words spoken over Judah and watched the scepter pass to the son no one expected to carry it. Every tribe so far has shown us the same thing. God does not throw people away because they fail. He speaks identity over them, and he keeps writing their story even when they cannot see how it will end. If this journey through the tribes is opening the Bible in a new way for you, would you do something for me? Hit that subscribe button so you do not miss what comes next. And in the comments, tell me which tribe's story has stayed with you the most so far? I read every single one, and your answer helps more people find these messages. We are only halfway through the tribes, but the story is about to get much deeper and much more personal. You have seen what happens when the firstborn fails and when anger almost destroys a family line. Now watch what happens when betrayal and suffering meet the purposes of God. Joseph. The name in Hebrew is Yosef. God will add, or may he increase. Rachel had prayed for more children, and God answered. But the story that followed did not feel like increase. It felt like loss. His brothers hated him for the dreams he carried and for the favor their father showed him. One day they threw him into a pit, sold him to traders, and told their father he was dead. You can imagine the silence that fell over that family for years. A father who would not be comforted, brothers who had to live with what they had done, and a young man in Egypt wearing chains he did not deserve. Yet the same God who had given him dreams was still writing. In prison, Joseph interpreted dreams. Before Pharaoh, he interpreted dreams. And suddenly the slave became second in command over the most powerful nation on earth. When famine came, it was Joseph who stored the grain. It was Joseph who saved nations, including the very brothers who had betrayed him. On his deathbed, Jacob did something no one expected. He took Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and adopted them as his own. He gave Joseph the double portion through his sons. Two tribes would come from one man. The one who was sold as a slave became the father of two tribes in Israel. What his brothers meant for evil, God meant for good, and he made it fruitful beyond anything they could have imagined. You begin to feel the pattern deepening. God is not finished with the people he has called, even when their own family writes them off. But not every story moves from pit to palace so cleanly. Benjamin was the youngest, the son Rachel died giving birth to. Jacob named him Benoni at first, son of my sorrow, but then he changed it to Benjamin, son of the right hand. The name itself carried both pain and promise. This tribe would be small, their territory would be narrow, yet they would be known for something fierce. Left-handed warriors who could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. From this tribe would come Israel's first king, Saul, and centuries later, from this same small tribe, would come a man named Saul of Tarsus, the one we know as the Apostle Paul. Small tribe, big destiny, another reminder that eyes in position never tell the whole story. But here is where it gets stranger. And as the years passed, not every tribe stayed close to the God who had called them. Some began to mix the worship of the Lord with the idols of the nations around them. One tribe in particular became a center of that compromise. They set up a carved image. They established their own priesthood apart from the one God had ordained, and that idolatry spread. The nation eventually split, 10 tribes in the north, 2 in the south. The northern kingdom fell first. Its people were carried away by the Assyrians. Cities were emptied, and for generations the question lingered. What happened to those 10 tribes? Are they gone forever? Did God forget them? You feel the weight of that question even now, because deep down, many of us have asked something similar about our own stories. Have I gone too far? Has God moved on from me? Is there still a place for someone whose family line feels broken or whose choices have scattered what should have been whole? The tribes teach us that God's faithfulness is more stubborn than our failure. But they also show us that idolatry, giving our worship to anything other than Him, always costs more than we think it will. The same God who turned Joseph's prison into a palace will not ignore when His people turn their hearts away. We are getting closer to the vision that will pull every thread together. A vision given to a man on a rocky island, far from these wilderness camps. In that vision, God will once again count His people by tribe. But this time something will be missing. And what is missing will tell us everything about what God values most when He seals His own. Stay with me. The story is not finished, and neither is the invitation. The years passed. The wilderness camp became a memory. Kings rose and fell. The nation split. 10 tribes were carried away. And then, on a small, rocky island called Patmos, a man named John, exiled for his faith, was caught up in the Spirit on the Lord's day. He saw heaven opened, and he heard a voice like the sound of many waters. Then an angel cried out with a loud voice, "Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads." John heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, from every tribe of the children of Israel. You can almost feel the weight of that moment. After all the scattering, after all the failure, after all the questions about who was still counted, God was still counting. He was still marking His own. He was still protecting a people for Himself. Judah was there. Reuben was there. Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Simeon, Levi, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin. All present, 12,000 from each. But one tribe was missing, Dan. The tribe that had once been known for judgment and strength had become the place where idolatry first took deep root in the land. They set up a carved image. They established their own priests. They led others into compromise. And when the final sealing came, that tribe was not named among the protected. You feel the soberness of it. This was not punishment for one man's mistake. This was the long result of a tribe that chose to give its worship to something other than the God who had called them. Idolatry does not just hurt the person who practices it. It eventually removes you from the very story you were meant to be part of. But watch what happens next. The same book that shows us a tribe missing from the ceiling also shows us something even more beautiful at the very end. John sees the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, and that city has 12 gates, great gates of pearl. And on those gates are written the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. Every single one, even the ones that failed, even the ones that were scattered, even the ones that seemed lost for generations. Judah's name is there, Reuben's name is there, Dan's name is there, Levi's name is there. Every tribe that ever carried a banner around that wilderness tabernacle has its name written on a gate that will never be shut. And here is where the story stops being only about ancient Israel and becomes about you. You may have felt like the missing one, the one who got left out of the family story, the one whose choices scattered what should have stayed together, the black sheep, the one who wonders if there is still a place for you at the table. You may have looked at your own life and thought, I have compromised too much, I have wandered too far. My name is probably not on any list that matters. But the God who ordered those 12 tribes in the wilderness is the same God who writes names on the gates of His eternal city. And He has already written your name in the only book that ultimately matters, the Lamb's Book of Life. Not because you never failed, but because the one who was slain for you has already paid for every failure and every scattering. The tribes were never just about bloodlines and land. They were always about belonging. And that belonging was always meant to point to something greater. A people from every nation, tribe, and tongue who will one day stand before the throne and cry out with a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." Your story is not over. Your tribe is not forgotten. And there is still a gate with your name on it. Before we close, let me leave you with three things I pray you carry long after this video ends. First, every tribe had a name, a story, a blessing, and a place around the presence of God. Even the ones that failed, even the ones that were scattered, even the one that was missing when the final sealing came. God does not erase people from his story because they stumble. He keeps writing. Second, your story is not too broken for him to redeem. The same God who took a slave named Joseph and made him the father of two tribes, the same God who turned a curse on Levi into the priesthood, is still in the business of taking scattered lives and giving them a place. You have an inheritance in his family that no failure can cancel. But the third thing is this: the God who put 12 names on the gates of the New Jerusalem has already written your name in the only book that matters. Not because you performed perfectly, not because your family line was flawless, but because the Lamb who was slain has already paid for every chapter you wish you could rewrite. There is still a gate with your name on it. You are not the missing one. You are not forgotten. You belong. So tell me in the comments, which tribe's story hit you the hardest today? Or which one do you feel you relate to most right now? I read every comment, and I would love to hear your story. The 12 tribes were never just about ancient bloodlines and desert camps. They were always about this: the relentless, stubborn, redeeming love of a God who still gathers his people and still writes names that will last forever. You are invited, you are wanted, you are home.